We are starting services at this time for Linda Ganser Selway. Officiating the services today is Rabbi Rachel Weiss from the JRC, Jewish Reconstructionist Congregation.
Good morning, everyone. There is something so lovely about being an Evanstonian, in which there are so many generations of neighbors and friends and colleagues and children who start that cycle over and over again. And when we happen upon these moments in our lives, which are inevitable for all of us, and recently many of us have been going to more and more of these rituals together, it is such a potent opportunity to be able to say that we are here for each other in whatever way we possibly can, when it is easy and when it is tragic and hard, in all different ways that we come together and show up. Linda had many different relationships with many of you in this room in all different ways. And yet, this past week, her death came as such a surprise. And so we gather here this morning to be able to sit with one another in that surprise and in that grief, and most importantly, in so much love. Part of Jewish tradition recognizes that we use symbols and rituals to help us move through these moments of loss and these very painful times. The ritual of Kriya, of tearing a ribbon, is a symbolic external ritual of an internal tear, the tear that cracked wide open when Linda died last Thursday, the tear that cracked wide open when you first learned the news, the tear that continues to be open and open as you hug the beloved family and community who is here. So we tear that ribbon. And the ritual words that we say is that God is close to the brokenhearted, that we are in a place of brokenness. And it is in acknowledging that brokenness that it allows us to feel what we're feeling and to be here together and to come into this place of beginning to remember Linda in all of those ways. So I want to ask those of you in her family who are wearing the black ribbon, the Kriya ribbon, to stand as I come forth to tear the ribbon with you. Baruch atah Adonai Dayan ha'emet, blessed is the one who is the knower of truths, who holds us in the realities of life and of death and of all of the living that happens in between. We are here to begin to remember, to tell the story of the life of Linda Ganser Selway, who was born on November 2nd, 1947, and died this past Thursday, April 10th. We remember her as the daughter of Henrietta and Howard, or Hen and Howie, as the beloved wife of 52 years of Mike Selway, the devoted and dedicated and loving mother of Meredith, and beloved mother-in-law of Joe, the sister, the oldest sister of Sue Ganser Levinson, of Phyllis Ganser of blessed memory, and Betsy Ganser of blessed memory, and beloved aunt to Hilary and Stephen, to Margy and David and Jessica and Adam and Molly, and great aunt of Louis and Hana, and cousins and friends and in-laws who are just like her family. All of you, all of us are in mourning today. We are here to honor Linda's legacy in her place of very, very powerful Ganser women. Voracious readers, smart people who use their gifts for teaching and care, for creating new ways to define social work, to use their words, to use public service, to be family anchors. You are women, and Linda was a woman of strong personalities, opinions. That moment when we know the truth about someone and can speak it and feel it and say, yes, she was. To be survivors of much loss in your family's life, from her father when she was young and her two sisters, of her mother who was a force. To be, as Linda was, a facilitator of connections, even in these last years when connections became much more frayed and much more sporadic and much more difficult. We are here to tell her story and to shift, as the wordsmiths in your family might recognize, the grammar from talking about Linda in the present to talking about Linda as she was. We chant the 23rd Psalm, which in our tradition is the psalm that helps us remember that even in these moments of mourning and grief, that in the times of isolation, there are so many ways in which we are not alone, which can be so fearful and so dysregulating and disruptive, but to remind us that that power that creates us all is always with us. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai rohi lo echsar, binot asher yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot, yenach aleini. Nafshi yeshovev, Yancheni b'maglei tzedek, Yancheni b'maglei tzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet, lo hirara ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishontecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai, shulchan neged sorerai, dishantav Hashem en roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov chesed, yedefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar, Adonai roi lo echsar. The line in this psalm, which you can read in its translation, that strikes me is the line that says, Kosi rivaya, my cup overflows, which reminds us of all of the goodness and the blessings, the collection of people and experiences of powerful impact that we have in our lives, that our cup is overflowing in this room with love, with tears, with memories. If it were Linda's cup overflowing, we know it would be iced tea with many, many lemons and a whole lot of Splenda. But the idea that she had the things that made her her, and that is what we celebrate, what we remember, and those things are both joyous and incredibly painful at the same time. And so we open our remembrances of Linda first by inviting her beloved Mike, her beloved husband of over 50 years, to come join us to share some of the words that you've written.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Meredith, for following your mother's footsteps and always offering support. Linda, my beloved companion for over 50 years, was lost to me and her hundreds of friends and family as a result of an illness that took away her ability to respond to emails and other communications. You know, I think some people were sad not to hear from her. She wanted you to hear from her, but she couldn't. She believed that she would eventually get better and be able to get back to people who reached out to her. That she was never able to respond to people she loved, left us with a difficult and profound frustration. She was not ready to leave us. Linda was the most loving and lovable person I have ever known. To all of you here, she would want to share her love and care. She literally loved each of you. We were extremely fortunate to have such a wonderful person in our lives. As we were trying to prepare for what we might say at Linda's funeral, Rabbi Weiss made a point that I found reassuring, that as we talked about Linda, what we would say today would be repeated again and again in different stories and different contexts. We would all be involved in sharing our love for Linda for years to come. Linda's love was a beacon to all who knew her. Her warmth and kindness were boundless, extending far beyond the confines of her immediate family. She had an extraordinary ability to make everyone feel special, cherished, and valued. Her laughter was infectious, and her smile a source of comfort and joy.
I want to invite up Sue, her sister, to share with us your words and stories about your beloved sister.
Wow. I know most of you came up and greeted us, but I am still surprised at how many people are here, and yet not surprised because Linda drew people, and once they were part of her life, they became the part of the extended Ganser family. This is not how I intended to start my remarks, so this is totally off the cuff. Thank you all for coming out. I know you all loved Linda. When I started my remarks at my sister Phyllis' funeral, I said, Philly was my sister and my friend. Linda was my sister and my friend. She was also at different times my protector, my teacher, my confidant, my adversary. There was never any doubt that we loved each other in the way only sisters can. Linda and I, and later with Philly, were the Ganser girls, even as adults. When I was born, Linda was 10 days short of 2 years old. The lore in our family was that toddler Linda had been told that she and Mommy and Daddy were going to have a new baby. To her, baby meant doll. So when our parents brought me home, she said, "Gimme," thinking I was for her. I don't think she ever let go of that feeling. Linda was part of my life from the time I was born, and I think she had no conscious memory of a time without me. That's not to say that she might not have preferred to be an only child, despite the fact that she thrived on being the oldest of 4, and she always impressed on us. This will resonate with you, Debbie. She was the oldest, she was the boss. Trying to think of what I would say today, my mind has been a swirl of a lifetime of memories. Don't worry that because I started with my birth, you will have to sit through 3/4 of a century of them. When I was 4, Linda came home from school, and wanting to share everything with me, she taught me to read, a true gift she bestowed on me, one of the passions we shared from that time on. We and Philly and my mother and Connie shared with each other good mysteries and authors. When I was 8, I fell in love. I don't know, if some of you may remember that on the second floor, as you got off the elevator of Fields in downtown Evanston, there was a very small toy department. And there was a very non-Jewish, that is Goyish-looking doll that I fell in love with. And she cost $8, and I was saving every penny so that I could afford her. My Aunt Pat gave each of us $1 to contribute to my cause. And Linda gave me the $1 she got from Aunt Pat so that I would have the money to buy Wendy. When Linda was in England, her sophomore year of college, which was my senior year of high school, I wrote to her about all the trials and tribulations of my life. She was a faithful correspondent, better than I have ever been. Many of you know what a good correspondent she was, from letters, cards, and emails. As you may know, after Linda hurt her knee in October, she didn't have access to her computer, and you stopped hearing from her. Actually, I was out of the country, and my clue that anything was wrong was when I didn't hear from her with her trademark multicolored birthday card to me on my birthday. Recently, I wrote her a snail mail letter from Richmond, where Michael and I were for a few months. I had learned a new type of art in one of my classes and wanted to share it with her. She used to draw families, and she was pretty good at it. It occurred to me as I wrote that maybe it was an early indication of what family meant to her, as most of you know. One of Linda's closest friends in college, in fact, he was her fiance for a short time, ended up in the military. He wrote me a letter. I don't remember why, although I was friends with him because Linda was friends with him. And in it, he referred to my loquacious sister. I didn't know what the word loquacious meant, so I looked it up. I thought then, and think to this day, that that's the perfect word to describe Linda. When I finished college and Linda finished graduate school, she and I spent 6 weeks in Europe. We had a great time, shared so many experiences, and also fought, as we did not infrequently. I smoked at the time, and Linda was pretty tolerant of that. She, who never smoked, chewed gum. Her gum chewing made me crazy, and we fought about it. We were on an isolated country road in Ireland when I told her to stop the car. I was getting out. She did, and I did. I thought I'd try hitchhiking, but I decided that even if a car came along, which was pretty unlikely in any circumstance, I couldn't take a ride because Linda would be coming back for me, and she wouldn't know what to do if I was gone. That was the way we fought, and it was really important to Linda to always make up. I think we said to you that we were brought up to not go to bed angry friends, and that was how Linda thought of her fights with people. They could be passionate, but the person was still her friend, even if she was angry and the other person was angry. After Linda and Mike got married, Linda incorporated me into their family. Once when I was single and probably heartbroken over the loss of some relationship, I had nothing to do on a Saturday night. We were leaving my mom's Saturday afternoon, and I invited Linda and Mike over for dinner. I was living in Uptown at the time, and they were living either on Sherwin, their first apartment, right, Mike? Or on Clyde, their second. One in Rogers Park, the other in South Evanston. Linda declined. Soon after I got home, Linda called and said they were going to come after all. Despite the fact that they were newly married and would probably have loved a Saturday night at home, she couldn't stand picturing me alone. I think I made Hamburger Helper, and I'm sure it was wonderful. From the time when Linda and Mike met, and those of us sitting around my mom's kitchen table had to get a look at Mike when he dropped Linda off, Mike has embraced Linda's whole family. Not just me, but Philly and Betsy, and maybe my mother most of all. As most of you probably know, Linda and Mike bought a house down the street from my mother, and Mike still lives there. Meredith grew up there, and now Meredith and Joe actually bought my mother's house, so they live down the street from Mike. I really think that, well, for one thing, when my mother got older, and she got quite old, Linda really made sure she was okay every day. She talked to her on the phone every day, and she said to me, well, she has to talk to somebody. But Mike really took care of her, too. And I know that Mike not only loved Linda very much, but loved my mother very much. It's beginning to sound like I'm giving you 3/4 of a century. It's not much more. As I'm sure most of you know, Linda loved and cherished all her nieces and nephews. She was the one who stayed on top of birthdays, sending checks from both of us, and also staying on top of holidays. She was very proud of me, as I was and am of her, and she wanted all good things for me, evidence the doll she helped me buy. Just a couple of other quick things I want to say about my sister. Oh, I missed a short paragraph. I just want to mention the incredibly profound impact Linda has had on my adult life, in that, along with my sister-in-law Judy, they introduced me to Michael. And Linda, in turn, embraced, loved, and valued Michael. A couple of other quick things I want to say about my sister. She bragged about our sharing friends, which was pretty standard operating procedure in our youths. Linda continued to share many of her friends with our family over her many years and friendships. When she learned she was pregnant with Meredith, she and Natalie came to my office to share the news with me. She was so excited. She continued to be very excited. And if you talk to Meredith, she might tell you about the trauma surrounding her birth. As we neared home, Michael and I have been in Richmond since January. And as we neared home on our drive from Richmond yesterday, we passed an exit from Michigan City. My grandmother, my father's mother, lived in Michigan City most of the year. She had 2 houses across from the lake. My mother used to take me and Linda there on the South Shore to stay for a few days. Some of you will remember that polio was an issue in those days, and so we didn't go to the beach, we didn't go to public parks, we didn't drink from drinking fountains, but the beach in Michigan City was private and safe. One year, Linda and I were left with my grandmother for a few days, or a week with my grandmother. We slept in the attic bedroom, which was pretty cool. I was so scared, but it was okay because my big sister was there to take care of me and run interference for me, which she did much of my childhood. In retrospect, I wonder if it was when my mother was pregnant with Philly. I'd like to ask Linda if she remembers. In our last conversation, Linda said to me, and she very often said this to me and often concluded our conversations with, "You're very important to me. I love you." I can't imagine my life from here on out without my big sister. Linda, if you are anywhere, I hope you know how important you are and were to me, and I love you.
Thank you, Sue. I am positive that she did through her life in all the ways that she lived and loved. Being an aunt was such a part of Linda's life, and I want to invite her niece Hilary to come and share some of your memories and your words.
I'm going to say just a few words about Aunt Linda, but first I wanted to note that she was, in fact, Dr. Aunt Linda, or perhaps Aunt Dr. Linda. After she finished her doctorate, we joked about how my cousins and my sister and I could now call her Doctor, and we playfully quibbled over which of those two versions sounded better. When I was thinking about what I wanted to say, I remembered the note that Aunt Linda wrote for my bat mitzvah service booklet. She had written something about feeling a new kind of love when I was born, and she became an aunt. I don't even have a copy of this booklet at my house and haven't looked at her exact words in decades. But this sentiment has stuck with me for going on close to 30 years now. And I looked it up last night when I got to my parents' house. This is what she wrote. She said, Hilary, my dear niece, your birth showed me how important the relationship is between sisters and their children. Before you were born, when your mother and Aunt Philly raved about Meredith and how much they loved her and how important she was to them, I felt pleased and proud, but I had no idea of the magnitude of that love until you, my firstborn niece, came into my life, and I was blown away by the love I felt and will always feel for you. This is such a beautiful, loving description, and it's Aunt Linda to a T. The just precision of the sentiment and the absolute elegance of the language. And it embodies what I want to share about Aunt Linda this morning. First, Aunt Linda loved being a sister to my mom, to Aunt Philly, to Betsy. I always knew how much Aunt Linda loved her sisters because she told me so all the time. And she told them so all the time. And in the way that my mom has always loved her sisters and the way that her sisters loved her, I learned what it meant to be a sister and to have a sister. And Margy, I hope I'm doing a good job. For my whole life, I've gotten to hear Aunt Linda tell stories about my mom, stories from before my dad knew her, before I knew her, and now there's no one left to remember my mom in this specific way. Second, the way that Aunt Linda describes loving me as her niece as soon as I was born, wholly and forever. I got to see that in the way that she loved my two kids, Louis and Hana, her grandnephew and grandniece. We joked that Aunt Linda was a great aunt and also a great, great aunt. When Louis was born, she and Uncle Mike drove out to Ann Arbor to spend some time with the three of us. She took to Louis immediately, holding him in her arms and cooing into his ear. She brought us some frozen meals, which were, of course, from Scandia. And she gave Louis a lammy because Meredith has her own beloved lammy. On this visit, I described to Aunt Linda the idea of the fourth trimester, which is like this description that describes the adjustment period immediately following birth. And Aunt Linda looked at me and said, "But can there really be a fourth trimester?" As you all know, she was an impeccable grammarian and grammatist, and those words do not mean exactly the same thing, which I know because I looked it up. I felt like I owed it to Aunt Linda to get my words exactly right. Aunt Linda gave my kids so many gifts over the years, especially after the start of the pandemic, And I knew it was because she wanted them to have pieces of her and her love for them that could be a part of their routine, part of the everyday. And it really worked. I would kind of just say, like, almost absentmindedly, you know, Aunt Linda gave that to you. And now my kids say, oh, I think Aunt Linda gave this to me. I really wish so much that I could have had more time with Aunt Linda, and especially that my kids could have had more time with her. But I know we'll tell stories about her. This is like what you were saying, Uncle Mike. She left us with so many stories. And I can think of really no better way to remember Aunt Linda and to hold her with us than to tell stories about her, to tell them in the way that she told them to us again and again, the same stories over and over again, so often and with such love that they became part of the very fabric of our lives. They became our own fables and our mythology and really the ties that bind us together. Thank you.
I want to invite Joe and Meredith to come together, both to tell some words and remembrances and stories, and then to sing.
I bet we both fit up here. I'm Linda's son-in-law, but I never really had that relationship, right? Like it doesn't describe the relationship we had, and I think that's true with a lot of people here. That the title doesn't always fit. I was thinking about what we wanted to share, and a number of things came up, and we could probably be up here for a while, but what we wanted to share was a poem from Linda, from her dissertation. And so in 2006, she finished her dissertation. This is very close to her retirement, right? She had another couple years to go, but really wanted to have that, and it was really important to her. It meant a lot. But 2006, to give some perspective, and this is meaningful to me, she had a career that spanned back into the 70s and had an impact then when we looked up some of what's out there, right? Well, did a Google search, Aunt Linda, my mother-in-law, and found an article from 1986, a couple articles, a series of articles in the Tribune talking about her work at Maine North and the impact she had and kind of the cutting edge of social work that she represented at the time. In any case, I don't think anybody could have, Linda would have said this. Her own words are right, meaningful here. In any case, the poem we chose is Legacy. I gaze upon the countenance of my daughter, who is on the brink of marrying, facing a wonderful life ahead. She's beautiful, both inside and out. Her fiancé is a splendid young man, reminiscent of her father and his gentleness, devotion, competence, and intellect. Their lives spread before them ripe with opportunity for success. My heart fills with love, as any parent's does when contemplating her offspring. I'm gratified that my daughter has chosen to follow in my footsteps and become a social worker. I'm proud of her and impressed by how naturally she falls into that role and how well and with what passion and compassion she discharges her responsibilities. Who am I now? I wonder as I finish my doctoral studies, contemplate retirement from my current job, and think about my daughter's impending marriage. Who am I in the process of becoming? Who will I be? These questions are fraught with anxiety. My definition of myself will necessarily change as my various roles disappear. Although I'm a lifelong learner, I will no longer be enrolled in graduate school. Although I must work at some gainful employment, I will no longer be the student assistant services coordinator at my high school. Although I will always be my daughter's mother, What that means will be different as she begins her life as a married woman. Thank heavens for my own true love, my life partner, my best friend, my husband, one constant in my life, my lovely daughter, with the as yet unwritten story of her life, like the unblemished sand stretching along the shoreline, occupies my reverie. It is not that she has never known adversity or made bad decisions that have left their mark. She has. Yeah. Yeah. But hopefully that sadness, those losses and bad choices have strengthened her and added to her depth as well, as will, I hope, the challenges that she must face as her life unfolds. Have I done everything I can to help her be happy, strong, and healthy? I ask myself. It is difficult to relinquish the parenting stance that has been so important to me for so long. As I've become immersed in the transformative experience of writing my dissertation, I've wondered how it is that this anti-racist effort has become so important to me. There are myriad reasons for my desire to do this compelling work. As I consider them, it occurs to me that perhaps the most important is the legacy I desire to leave my daughter. I'd like her to know how meaningful it is to care about an ideal so strongly. They are impelled to act on it, to try to change yourself, to make yourself a better person. I yearn for a society rid of racism and bigotry so that her children can live in a better world. I want her to recognize the privilege of her place so that she can fight against the forces that cause inequity. I hope she will understand what it means to be a white anti-racist woman. I want her inheritance to be that her mother has worked with integrity for freedom and opportunity to truly be the birthright of all people. In all the years I mothered my sweet, wonderful girl when she was growing up, I did not know these things to tell her except in the most
INCHOATE.
inchoate way. We'll figure that out later. Yeah. There was a title of another poem that used that word, but we never figured that out. Now I have so much more to share with her about equity, ethics, and social justice. What is exciting is that we will learn together. My role is changing. I do not know who will hear or hearing heed my words, but my daughter will. She already has. Who am I becoming? I'm not certain. But now as I think of my daughter and the legacy I want to leave her, I face the prospect with exhilaration and hope rather than apprehension. Her own words say a lot, and certainly she had a lot to say. There was a lot of apprehension these last few years. It was hard for her seeing the world return and her not feeling like she could. There were a lot of reasons there, but I think that the lasting legacy of the pandemic on her final years was strong. In the special relationship we had, I had the opportunity to see her a fair amount in these final years. And, you know, I know that she still chews gum really, really loudly. But I know how much she cared about us. I heard all the time in those same phone calls, they often ended with, I just want you guys to be happy. And I know that to be true. I've spent 20 years either living with Linda or within a block, or for a brief stint, we had an apartment and that was 2 miles away. And I knew exactly who she was, but she definitely had a soft spot for me and treated me with a kind of patience and grace, and even held back her opinions in areas where we might have disagreed.
That's why she was her favorite son. Or child.
But I think it's lovely to hear the stories. I'm reminded of one more I want to share briefly, and this is something thinking about Linda and the qualities that were important to share here today. I was thinking about a story, one of those things I've heard so many times, I don't know if I was there. I might have been, I don't think so, but this was Linda telling Meredith how Meredith gets from her mom her intelligence, her way with words. Right.
No, just me and my dad.
But Ryan, her ability to connect with people and this long list of some of Linda's best qualities and things that absolutely Meredith does share. And from your dad, you get your love of animals. Right? And it's kind of one of those things that we've heard so many times and for so many years, right? I feel like I was sitting there. And that punchline resonates. And again, those stories really mattered to Linda, and we really appreciate you all telling them. With that,
Well,
Huh?
I kept thinking the words would come to read here, and I just, there were too many, and so I thought the best, perhaps, way I could honor her is to sing a song she would always make me sing, and that I was able to sing to her as she was dying. And I also, she was very passionate, and we did not have a perfect relationship. And always I knew she had my back. And when I had struggles, very significant struggles in my life that I thought were gonna embarrass her or whatever, she just was the most supportive person and always in my corner. And she was also very opinionated with me. And I'm gonna miss that. Although I will say, in the last 10 years, I have learned to not argue with her, and I'm glad. I bite my tongue. So I'm not sure the tune or the pitch, and everyone who knows this song is welcome to join in. It's Lechi Lach. We looked up the meaning of the song, and it was both to guide someone or on an unknown journey, which I thought was appropriate. And it also is about us going within, like she did. She wasn't always that self-aware, but she certainly was during her dissertation. And I thought that was appropriate because I think she's left so many people a little bit, lost without speaking to her in a while. And just know she really did love all of you. So it's Lechi Lach, to a land that I will show you. Lech Lecha, to a place you do not know. Lechi Lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. And you shall be a blessing, Lechi Lach, Lechi Lach, and I shall make your name great, Lech Lecha, and all shall praise your name, Lechi Lach, to a place that I will show you. And you, Chaim, L'simchat Chaim, L'simchat Chaim, Lechilach. I love you, Mommy. So, in the past, little while, as she hurt her knee and hasn't been speaking much or able to go upstairs to her computer, I talk to her a lot. We talk pretty much every day just to check in. And just because she wants to tell me that she loves me and how proud she is of us. And I think she wanted to never, just in case, she wanted to make sure we knew. So she told us every day. I'm going to miss that.
Those words of Lechilach, which reference a story in the Torah from Genesis about Abraham being told, go to this new place where you will lead and be the founder of the nation that will be known as the Jewish people, has a double grammar meaning. Because it means, Lech Lecha is a command. It means go, and it means you yourself have to go. You're setting out, it means there's no one else. It means you have to, in that Paulo Freire way, make the path by walking. But it also means, Lech Lecha, or Lechilach, which is the feminine version, means go to yourself. Go, not just go, you must go, but go to yourself. Go to the true person who is within. That particular melody was written by Debbie Friedman in another forefront of social justice. It was written for the first conference of very closeted, at that point in the 1980s, gay and lesbian rabbis who couldn't be out. And it was the blessing she wrote to say, someday you will go and make that path, truly steeped in the legacy of pioneering. To live in Evanston, to live in a community, is to also grow up in a community where your neighbors stay your neighbors and stay connected, and to do as Linda did, to grow up on Seward and then live down the block on Seward, to go to District 65 and raise her kids in District 60, her child and her extended nieces and nephews in District 65, to go to ETHS and then come back and pioneer the student services work at ETHS is so very Evanstonian. It is also so very Evanstonian to be steeped in the culture of our community and to recognize its incredible breadth and depth and beauty and so many of the problems that exist that are so systemic that she named in her dissertation so deeply, of the racism and segregation that is inherent to our city and we have been working for decades to change. And that with her work, not just as the student assistance services coordinator, as a drug counselor and grief counselor, developing alternatives to suspension, this groundbreaking student-to-student work to support teachers and students and colleagues in her work is a legacy of how we do education, social work, but mostly how we raise communities that are strong and solid, and that's what she was so dedicated to. To be someone in Linda's life meant that your relationships were wide and deep and complicated. From her growing up and going to Shimer College, to getting an MSW at University of Illinois, to her doctorate in education at National Louis. Linda, as her siblings referred to her as, was the director, the oldest of four. And Betsy was born with birth trauma, and Philly, who died of breast cancer 25 years ago, and Sue, who she loved so very much and was so important to you. It is such a remarkable passing of phase of life as you have buried now and will bury 3 of your sisters, and to stand here and know that you carry their legacy so strongly within you, Sue. And that, Mike, you carry this legacy of loving her so deeply and being there in her presence, that you have not only cared for her, but the way that you cared for her mother, that you cared for Hen, in a way that you've passed down to Joe, who cared for Linda. This is a story of Linda's life, of being deeply and remarkably intertwined. Because that's actually what this career of social work is all about, is being intertwined in such a deep and loving and difficult way. We know that Linda was so smart, was a consumer of books, sometimes 2 in an afternoon, sometimes while sitting in the hot tub, of someone who was dedicated to making sure that the field she was committed to also changed when it needed to be there not just for her students, whether they were struggling with loss or addiction or the complicated nature of adolescence, but also for her peers and her colleagues and the staff. So much of the ETHS social work department is sitting right here in this room that it's a good thing that there's a few more of you at the high school, because otherwise you're all here as the mom of a junior at the high school and the cousin of a social work intern in your department right now. This work is hard, and this work is so profound. And she knew about the complex nature of relationships because of her family. For Linda, family wasn't extended, it was just all close. You were all close to her as she brought you all in, whether it was to your holiday tables, to remember the details, the traditions that were so important that Meredith and Joe got married on Mike and Linda's anniversary, to share that together. She was the rememberer of details like that. These last 6 years, as we've heard, were very, very hard. The reality of the fear of COVID and isolation struck very deeply for Linda, compounded by the isolation that happened when her knee injury stopped her from being able to get up to her computer. And because she was a stubborn person and was stuck the way she was, she believed that eventually she'd get back and everything would be okay. And so getting a laptop to make it easier to communicate by email on the first floor of her house just wasn't something she wanted to do. In a time in our world, it's still the time that we are in, despite how much we continue to work, it is hard for women to be smart and strong and passionate and loud and get angry and be stubborn without being vilified for all of those things at some point. It is too easy for us to read angry or aggressive as cutting something off, because it's just easier sometimes to withdraw than confront or engage or escalate. For Linda, those were the normal patterns of human behavior and connection. To be loud and passionate and proud and stubborn, and when she was angry, to feel angry and work through it because the relationship was still there. And sometimes the people she was angry with felt that was going to be okay, and sometimes they just didn't. Really, for Linda, it was about love and care, that she believed in feeling the feelings and working through them, expressing that anger so she didn't go to bed angry in that way, and sometimes that was reciprocated and sometimes it wasn't. She wanted to move through it. But it would have been so important to Linda, and is so important to her family, to know that we are moving through this ritual today that is about loss and heartbreak and remembrance and details and legacy, knowing that her compassion and understanding and love for everyone she had a relationship with was there. And it is what we take upon ourselves now as our sacred responsibility to hold on to that, to remember that, to say we can actually keep that legacy by continuing to tell the stories. It would be impossible to tell 77 years worth of stories in an hour, and so we don't try to do it all now. We will remember and tell stories of Linda, of Mom, of Aunt Linda, of Big Sister Linda, of colleague, of coworker, as Dr. Linda, as long as we are telling stories. That's how we keep our communities together. That's how we keep our memories alive. That is the way that we honor legacy. Even when it was hard, even when it wasn't perfect, or it felt strained, or it felt painful, to be able to say there was this legacy that is here and that is deep, and to remember, and to keep telling those stories. Not only when our beloveds are here with us in the present, but when the grammar changes to past tense. In Judaism, we recognize that our bodies and our souls are two separate entities, that when we first take a breath, when we are born, our soul enters our body and makes us the unique and wonderful and quirky and difficult and beautiful, complex human beings that we are. And that when we exhale for the last time, our soul departs our body that has just been the vessel all along to contain us. And so we pray, we sing for the rising of Linda's soul, her essence, that it may come to dwell in a place of peace. So I invite you to rise either in body or in spirit as we remember Linda, and as we pray together that the essence of who she was may be released and land inside our memories and our broken hearts. El malei rachamim shochein bamromim Hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina B'malot kedoshim uteharim kezohar harakia mazhirim Et nishmat liba bracha bat chana shehacha leolama An habal harachamim, hastireha beseter knafecha leholamim, utzrod bitzrachaim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, vetanuach beshalom al mishkava, venamar, Amen. God, filled with compassion, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your Shekhinah, amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating like the brilliance of the skies, the soul of Linda Ganser Selway, who has gone to her eternal place of rest. May you, who are the source of compassion, shelter her beneath your wings eternally and bind her soul among the living, that she may rest in peace. And we say, Amen.
You may be seated. This concludes this portion of the service here at our chapel. The interment will continue at Memorial Park Cemetery here in Skokie. Upon return from the cemetery, the family will be returning to our chapel from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m., where they'll be sitting Shiva here in the North Chapel across the way. And again, the family will also be sitting at the Levinson residence, which is 9357 Forest View Road in Evanston, Wednesday and Thursday from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. That information is available inside the folders that you received as you arrived today, and if you did not receive one, they will be made available as you depart. It's also available on our website for anyone joining us via the live stream. For those of you joining us in procession, we'll ask that you please keep a few safety measures in mind as we make our way to the cemetery. Please make sure that you have your bright headlights and your hazard lights on at all times. Please follow the car in front of you as closely as safety permits, especially through intersections, to avoid any gaps in the procession. And please obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. Our staff will have them available as you depart. You're going to place that on the passenger side of your front windshield. The following have been asked to act as pallbearers today. As I call your name, please come forward. Michael Levinson, Joe Alger, Hilary Levinson, Margy Levinson, Stephen Wade, Chuck Yalowitz, and Myrna Gray. Pallbearers, I'll ask you to come forward and ask everyone else to please rise as we escort the family, the casket, and the clergy from our chapel.